They thought it was a peaceful pond, quiet, still, tucked into the edge of my ranch like something out of a nature calendar, framed by tall grass, a few crooked fence posts, and just enough reflection on the surface to look like a painting. So naturally, the HOA pitched their tents. Fold-out chairs, fairy lights, campfire pits, a laminated sign that read, "Welcome to Ridgewood Retreat. Community pond nights every Saturday." They even had movie nights scheduled. What they didn't know, what none of them bothered to ask, was that the water they were pitching tents beside wasn't just murky. It was functional, as in waste functional. That pond? It wasn't for fishing. It wasn't for wading. It wasn't for connecting with nature. It was the holding basin where I drained every ounce of bull and horse waste from my upper pasture. A low-slope runoff pool engineered for one thing, containing livestock manure and the stormwater that carried it. And I'll admit, I tried to warn them, but they waved me off, said it looked too nice to be dangerous. So I let nature handle it, because when the wind shifted and the sun came out and the temperature rose just enough to wake up that pond, they got the message, loud and gagging, that if someone can claim your land for recreation without asking, what happens when it's not what they thought it was? What happens when the fire pit they build sits 12 feet from a pond engineered to hold a year's worth of manure? When their yoga mats unroll beside water teeming with bacteria, flies, and enough nitrogen to turn the air into a weapon? They thought they were claiming paradise. What they really set up camp beside was a biological landmine. And if I hadn't let nature teach them a lesson, they would have kept coming. More events, more tents, more kids splashing near a runoff basin they didn't understand. But see, when your pond is full of bull and horse waste, you don't need a speech. You don't need a lawsuit. You don't even need to raise your voice. You just wait. Wait for the sun to rise. Wait for the wind to turn. And then you let the truth speak for itself. Because sometimes the loudest boundary you can draw is the stench of reality on a warm Saturday morning. You learn to live with a certain smell when you run livestock. Not that you stop smelling it. You just start understanding it. Sweetness means mold. Sharpness means bacteria. A little ammonia? That's normal. But when you get a warm breeze off the manure pond, right from a week of hard work and late spring sun, well, that's just ranch life talking back. I never thought I'd have to explain that to an HOA. But then again, I never thought anyone would willingly set up tents next to a wastewater retention pond either. Shows what I know. The pond in question sits at the southeast edge of my property, fed by sloped runoff trenches from the bullpens and horse paddocks. It's about 30 yards across and just shallow enough to qualify as a seasonal containment basin under the state's environmental code. Translation? It's where the crap goes. Literally, when it rains or when I rinse the holding areas, the runoff moves downhill, collecting not only water, but also everything those animals leave behind. Solids settle. Water stagnates. Nature does its thing. It's not pretty. It's not clean. And it is absolutely, in no uncertain terms, not a swimming hole, which is exactly what the HOA thought it was. It started like most stupid ideas do, quietly, confidently, and with just enough neighborhood gossip to carry momentum. I noticed an increase in foot traffic near the back of my property. Teenagers with hammocks, a yoga mat or two rolled out under the oaks. Lawn chairs suddenly showing up along the fence. Then about 2 weeks in, the first tent went up. Bright orange, two-person, brand new from the look of it. I figure it was a one-off. Maybe someone's kid wandered off with permission and a bad sense of direction. Then came the second tent, and the third, and then folding tables. By the time I walked the fence line, there were 5 tents staked down on the public side of the fence, pressed right up to the tree line that bordered the pond. Inside those tents, coolers, portable speakers, solar lanterns, board games. By the pond itself, lawn chairs, citronella candles, and 2 canoes. Canoes. On that pond. I stood there for a long minute, trying to process what I was looking at. Because I know what that water is. I know what sits at the bottom, what floats in the heat, what stirs up when a kid tosses a rock. And these folks, well, they were smiling, laughing, setting up a projector screen across a pair of tree trunks like it was Sundance out here. I made my way over the property line, not to start a fight, just to ask a simple Reasonable question. Who gave you permission to camp here? A woman I recognized from a few HOA mailers stood up from a fold-out chair and brushed grass from her khakis. Oh, hey, you must be the guy with the horses, right? Yeah, and this is my land. She frowned. No, I don't think so. This is part of the shared buffer zone. Karen said it was open space, undeveloped. Karen from the HOA? Yeah. She said the board cleared it for community eco-camping. On my side of the property line, she said it wasn't marked. Now, I've got no problem with people enjoying nature, but there's a big difference between nature and manure. So I pointed toward the pond. That's not a lake. That's a livestock runoff pond. The water's full of waste from the bull and horse pens. This isn't safe. The woman blinked. It looks fine. Looks can be deceiving. That pond is literally full of animal excrement. She waved it off. Karen said it was just standing water. It's not like anyone's drinking from it. And as if on cue, a kid nearby dipped their foot in and screamed. It's squishy. I sighed. Look, you need to take this down. This isn't a campground, and it sure as hell isn't sanitary. Karen said. I held up a hand. Yeah, I got it. Karen said. Well, I'm saying something too. And what I'm saying is, pack it up. They didn't. Instead, the next morning, a flyer showed up on my mailbox. Printed on thick paper, laminated, and taped down like it was sacred text. Herb Ridgewood Forest Eco Camping Initiative. Herb, come enjoy the untouched beauty of our neighborhood's hidden pond. Family-friendly, environmentally conscious, and 100% HOA approved. Community campouts every weekend. Bring your own tent. Canoes available. Stargazing optional but encouraged. Optional. But apparently, ignorance was mandatory. That weekend, the numbers doubled. 10 tents. 3 dogs. A barbecue setup near the reeds. Karen herself showed up in a folding chair with a megaphone and a clipboard. You know the type. Blonde bob. Overpriced sunglasses. Shirt that says Live Laugh Lake. I walked up again. Karen, you're on private land. She didn't look up. Actually, we've looked into it. This area isn't clearly marked. We're within the acceptable margin of communal boundary. That pond is a waste reservoir. She raised an eyebrow. Well, if it was truly that dangerous, you'd have posted signs. There are signs. You tore them down to hang lanterns. She shrugged. If it bothers you, you're welcome to file a complaint. Already did. Then I suggest you wait for a response. Then she smiled, condescending, sugary. Until then, enjoy the smell of community. And for the first night, they did. They roasted marshmallows. Projected a nature documentary on the sheet between 2 oaks. Someone brought a ukulele. Children skipped rocks across a surface they didn't realize was hiding 2 years of decomposed livestock waste. But see, nature is patient. So am I. And what Karen didn't know was that the pond had been sitting quiet through a cool spell. Temperatures had stayed low. Wind patterns were gentle. Everything was stable. Until it wasn't. The next morning, the forecast called for an unexpected heat wave. 88 degrees Fahrenheit by noon. Humidity spiked. No wind. And then the shift. By 3 p.m., the temperature hit 93 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun bore down on that black, nutrient-rich pond like a spotlight on a guilty man. Gas bubbles started rising. The surface thickened with algae bloom and stirred sediment. And just as the afternoon wind picked up from the east, it happened. The air changed. Not gradually, violently, like someone had flipped a switch on a septic tank and fired it through a megaphone. You know what happens when livestock runoff heats up? Anaerobic bacteria start working overtime. That means methane, hydrogen sulfide, ammonia. And in a pond that's been quietly collecting horse and bull waste all spring, that means terror. It hit the first tent like a wall. You could hear the gagging, then the yelling. People burst out of the tents like they were on fire. One man knocked over a camping stove. A woman screamed, "What is that smell?" Karen stood frozen by the reeds, both hands over her nose, eyes watering. One kid puked into a backpack. Another shouted, "Is this poop water?" And yes it was. The breeze only got stronger. I watched from my porch with an iced tea and the quiet satisfaction of a man who didn't have to say, "I told you so," because the air was doing it for me. By sundown, the tents were gone. Not packed, abandoned. One floated half-submerged at the pond's edge, trash bags scattered like tumbleweeds. And Karen? She didn't say a word, didn't send a follow-up flyer, didn't smile when she passed by the next morning. She just looked straight ahead, lips tight, eyes red. I imagined the pond still lingered in her sinuses. Good. The heat faded, but the smell? That lingered. Even after the tents disappeared and the HOA retreat melted down into silence, something had shifted in the air. Not just the stench, but the attitude. Because they weren't done. Karen wasn't done. What normal people would take as a humiliating, memory-searing warning, Karen took as a setback, a hiccup. And within 1 week of the Great Pond Purge, she was back at it, clipboard in hand, standing at the same trailhead that bordered the waste basin like it was the gates of some summer camp paradise. This time, she came with flyers and a megaphone. Community nature nights begin this Friday. Her voice boomed down the cul-de-sac, bouncing off garages like a PDA siren. Yoga, eco-journaling, canoe rides, and marshmallow roasts under the stars. I blinked from my porch, coffee in hand. Canoe rides. Back in the same water that had made 3 people vomit and 1 grown man scream like a wounded possum just 5 days earlier. And marshmallows. Because nothing says serenity like roasting sugar over a pit beside a methane-saturated pond filled with bull waste. I walked the trail again that afternoon. Not to fight, just to see how bad it had gotten. They'd cleaned up most of the trash, mostly. But there were still smudges in the grass where tents had collapsed. The reeds were trampled. New tracks were already forming. Someone had carved a crude bench out of a down log and set up a waterproof speaker system, rigged to a portable solar panel. Someone else, and I'm not making this up, had attached glow-in-the-dark stepping stones along the slope that led down to the waterline. It looked like a dollar store wedding had been staged by someone with no nose and no permits. And the smell? Still there, subtle now, but waiting, thick beneath the surface. So I filed another complaint, straight to the HOA board. This time I attached aerial photos of the runoff trench system, filed coordinates, a soil quality analysis I'd run last year as part of the county AG program. I even included a copy of the environmental zoning classification that defined the pond's function under Municipal Water Management Code. Then I added one sentence in bold. This pond is not decorative. It is a livestock runoff basin. Trespassing is a legal liability. And then I waited. The response? Nothing. No call. No email. Not even a "we'll look into it." But 2 days later, a fresh flyer appeared on every mailbox in the neighborhood. I still have mine. It read, "Camping Ridgewood Forest Nature Nights. Rebooted. Camping. We've had a few hiccups, but the Ridgewood HOA is proud to announce the formal reopening of our community pond site for supervised use. Herb canoe rides, crescent moon night hikes, person in lotus position yoga under the stars, notebook nature journaling sessions, fire weekly campfire events for families. As always, please be respectful of natural smells, and don't forget your bug spray. HOA President Karen McAdams. PS signs are coming soon. Signs. She acknowledged natural smells, as if the air had just been a little musty, as if the pond hadn't gas-chambered her entire front row of campers and caused a kid to scream, "IS this poop water," and worse. People showed up again. I spotted a kid on a Razor scooter cutting across my fence line like it was a shortcut to the lake. A couple set up hammocks on the east end and drank boxed wine while dipping their feet into the murky shallows. One woman carried a reusable straw and an acoustic guitar. They weren't deterred. They'd been reassured. Karen had made it sound like I was the problem, like I was the cranky guy on the hill too bitter to share a harmless pond. And now, trash was piling up again. Beer cans, snack wrappers, sunscreen bottles floating on the edge of the reeds. Someone left a plastic pink flamingo staked right next to one of my drainage flags. That night, I pulled out the zoning maps. The real ones. Not the HOA sketches or the community trail map Karen liked to hand out at potlucks. No, actual zoning documentation from the county registrar's office. I marked out every inch of the pond's boundary, the slope, the runoff trenches. And you know what? There wasn't a single square foot of that water that crossed into HOA property. Not one blade of grass. The entire waste collection system, from paddock to overflow, sat squarely on my parcel. And the trail they were using? Technically mine, too. The fence line just didn't make it obvious. So I started documenting. This time, I went beyond cameras. I took soil samples, water samples, took thermal photos showing waste heat from decomposition activity. I created a binder titled HOA Trespass and Public Health Violations, Pond Zone. Inside, 27 timestamps of unauthorized presence. Photos of children wading into the sludge mud edge. Garbage accumulation dates and removal logs. Screenshots of HOA flyers with Karen's signature. Witness statements from 2 neighbors who thought it was weird there were no fences. And the centerpiece, lab results from the water. High ammonia, coliform bacteria through the roof. Confirmed presence of E. coli in stagnant pockets. At levels that made it clear, this was not a gray area. It was a toxic zone. And the worst part? Karen had tried to brand it as safe for families. I didn't go public yet, but I started preparing. Because this wasn't just about land anymore. This was about deception, about someone hijacking access, rewriting rules, and rebranding my land for PR. She'd taken what was quite literally a biologically active manure pond and turned it into a marketing gimmick. No permits, no waivers, no understanding of environmental law, just vibes and flyers and community togetherness. And I had the proof. Then came the tipping point. A knock at my door, Saturday afternoon. A man in a flannel shirt and cargo shorts stood there with a clipboard. Hey neighbor, just wanted to give you a heads up. Karen's organizing a kids' paddleboard lesson next Saturday. You might want to tidy up the edge of the pond so nobody steps on the sharp gravel. I blinked. Excuse me? Yeah, she said you're okay with it now. That the smell's better, and you've agreed not to block access for the next few events. She said that. Yeah, said you understood how important community space was, and that the pond technically isn't a formal water system, so it's fair use. He handed me a flyer. Karen's working hard to make this place great, man. She says you're coming around. That night, I went down to the edge of the pond with a lantern, watched the water ripple, smelled the faint sulfur stink that still danced just beneath the algae, and I realized this wasn't about smell anymore. It wasn't about runoff, or zoning, or E. coli. It was about control, about a woman who thought proximity gave her power, about a community so used to being told what's available that no one bothered to ask what was legal. I took a photo of the pond that night. Still, murky, slight steam rising in the moonlight. Then I opened a fresh folder on my desktop. Karen, full liability brief. Because now, it was time to go on offense. There are times in life when you yell, and there are times when you whisper and let the wind do the rest. I chose the latter, because at this point, the HOA wasn't just ignoring me, they were mocking me. Publicly. After I sent the cease and desist, I expected at least some hesitation. A phone call, a pause, maybe a reluctant acknowledgement that, hey, maybe we shouldn't turn a cow crap pond into a canoe haven. Instead, Karen called an HOA meeting and invited the whole neighborhood. We received a complaint, she said, standing at the front of the rec room with a fresh stack of flyers. Someone suggesting the community pond isn't safe, that it's dangerous. She even used finger quotes around the word dangerous. People laughed. One guy in the back shouted, "It's just a puddle, Karen." She nodded, flipping the flyer around. We've reviewed the boundaries, and frankly, we don't believe anyone can own a body of water that isn't fenced, mapped, or designated for a specific use. So unless someone installs a moat and crocodiles, we're proceeding. Laughter again. Someone actually clapped. She finished with, "Next Saturday, we're hosting Nature Night by the pond. Music, marshmallows, and moonlight. Bring a chair, not a lawsuit." They applauded like she was running for Congress. I didn't say a word, didn't attend the meeting, didn't respond to the emails that followed. I just made one phone call the next morning. His name was Will. He worked for the County Agricultural Waste and Water Oversight Division, which, I'll admit, doesn't sound exciting. But for guys like me who run livestock, Will is a kind of quiet superhero. He understands manure the way some men understand wine. I told him what was going on. His response? They're camping next to a Class C open pit waste basin without a barrier. Yep. Are they swimming in it? Paddleboarding. Jesus Christ. Well, showed up the next day. Khakis, clipboard, official boots that say I've walked through worse. He spent 2 hours on site, took water samples, measured runoff slope, checked the trench lines, dipped a probe into the water, and pulled out a chunk of something that squelched like regret. Then he pulled out a bright orange sign from his truck, nailed it to a post by the trailhead. It read, "Warning caution, agricultural waste management site. NO entry, livestock runoff zone. Violation of Municipal Code July 4th. 21 is punishable by fine and prosecution." He added one more under it just in case. "This is not a swimming hole." I thanked him. He nodded. "If they ignore this, I'll write citations." "They'll ignore it." He smiled. "Then I'll be back." Now, most people, normal, functioning people, would read those signs, smell the air, and decide that maybe yoga under the stars could wait. But not Karen. Karen responded by printing her own signs. She posted them the next morning. "This is a shared natural zone. Use at your own discretion. Signs recently placed by non-community actors are under review by Ridgewood HOA Legal Committee." Non-community actors. I half expected her to accuse me of being funded by Big Soil. Saturday arrived hot. Unseasonably hot. 95 degrees Fahrenheit by 2 p.m., with the kind of humidity that makes your clothes stick and the air hang heavy like a wet sponge. Karen rolled in with a full truckload of event gear. Projector screen, coolers, a collapsible snack bar tent. She looked like she was setting up for Coachella, not a night beside the county's largest open-air poop pit. By dusk, the crowd had gathered. 30, maybe 40 people. Kids with glow sticks. Someone played acoustic guitar near the dock, which was really just a piece of plywood that had floated into place and been mistaken for a platform. They laughed, took photos, laid out towels like they were beachside, and still, they ignored the signs. People leaned on them. Some even took selfies beside them. A couple flipped one backward so it wouldn't ruin the aesthetic. I didn't stop them, didn't show up. I just watched from a distance with a thermal camera, a time-stamped notebook, and a lawn chair 3 fields away. Because I knew what was coming. See, anaerobic bacteria aren't just gross. They're performers. Give them heat, time, and still water, and they put on a show. The pond had been cooking all week. Rising heat meant rising gas. And around 8:40 p.m., just after Karen shouted, "Let's get the movie started," the pond began to bubble. Not big bubbles. Not cinematic ones. Tiny ones. Consistent. Relentless. Like soda fizz from hell. No one noticed at first. Then the wind shifted. It didn't shift hard. Just enough. Just enough to roll a slow, moist curtain of sulfur-rich air across the party like a theater fog machine loaded with pure misery. The first cough came from a kid. Then someone gagged. Then a woman screamed. "What is that?" Karen tried to smile through it. "It's just nature." But then came the real show. The pond gurgled. Audibly. A wet, deep, bubbling retch that sounded like the earth itself throwing up. And then the surface popped, gas pockets exploding like landmines. People fled. One guy tripped over a speaker. 2 tents collapsed as a group ran in panic. A girl yelled, "My eyes are burning." A man lost a flip-flop and screamed like he'd been shot. Karen tried to give a speech. I watched her raise the megaphone, but she dropped it when someone nearby dry-heaved so hard they fell into the mud. By 9:15, the pond was empty. Not of waste, no, that remained, but of people. The party was over. The next day, they tried to pretend it hadn't happened. Karen posted on the community app. "Last night's nature night was cut short due to an unexpected algae bloom. We'll be reworking our schedule and safety measures accordingly." Unexpected. She called unexpected, like she hadn't been warned in writing, in person, and by a literal government-issued sign. But this time, the neighborhood didn't buy it. Someone posted a video of the gurgling pond. Another posted photos of the warning signs Karen had covered with a picnic blanket. A parent uploaded a clip of their kid throwing up next to a tent. The comments turned fast. Why weren't we told the truth about the pond? Karen knew. This is negligence. My son is now afraid of water. He cries when he sees the sprinkler. Even the HOA board started to wobble. One member emailed me directly. Can we talk? I didn't realize she was ignoring the signs. I didn't respond yet. I was still collecting my final pieces of evidence, still preparing my formal filing. Because this wasn't just a win. This was leverage. Now I had photos, video, scientific reports, a government-issued warning, eyewitness testimony, medical receipts for 3 upset stomachs, Karen's own flyers contradicting every safety measure on file. The folder was 2 inches thick, labeled HOA Pond Disaster, formal record of willful negligence. And just in case they still want to test me, I had the signs reposted, bigger, brighter, anchored in concrete bases. I added one more for flavor. This pond is full of *T. Literally. Stay back. You've been warned. The HOA hadn't seen a crowd like this in years. The parking lot was full. People were circling like vultures for open spaces, some walking from 2 blocks away just to attend what was now being referred to, unironically, as the pond meeting. There were whispers, side glances. One neighbor carried a binder under her arm. Another held a reusable water bottle, like a weapon. Inside the community rec hall, the folding chairs were already gone. People stood shoulder to shoulder, fanning themselves with leftover flyers from Karen's failed nature night. The air was thick with outrage and something else. Remnants of the pond still clung to their noses, maybe even their pride. Someone coughed. A child muttered, "It still smells like hot dog water." Then the door opened, and I walked in. Not dramatically. No theme music. No aviator shades. Just me. A backpack. A rolled tube of maps under one arm. A clipboard in the other. And a single USB drive in my pocket that could nuke the entire HOA. Karen was already at the front, pacing in flats and a peach cardigan that looked like it was sweating with her. She adjusted the mic stand 3 times in 30 seconds. Tapped it once. Cleared her throat. Smiled like she'd just want to bake sale. "Hello, neighbors. Thank you for coming. I know emotions are high. Why weren't we told the pond was toxic?" The question came fast, sharp. Karen blinked. I don't believe that language is accurate. My kid threw up for 2 hours. Our dog still won't go outside. You covered the warning signs. Karen held up both hands. Okay. I know there was a little confusion last weekend. I stepped forward. There wasn't confusion. There was willful negligence. Heads turned. Karen's smile collapsed into her collarbone. "I'm sorry. You weren't on the agenda." I kept walking. Up the aisle. Past the crowded rows of folding arms and narrowed eyes. Stopped in front of the projector table. Set down my gear. Plugged in a USB. "You didn't put me on the agenda," I said, "because the agenda was your protection plan. But tonight, we're done with the script." First slide, a satellite image. Zoomed in topography of the property lines, with red outlines drawn around every legal border. My voice was calm. "This is a zoning map from the county registrar's office. The pond sits entirely on my land. Not a shared zone. Not a gray area. Not a buffer. Private agricultural land." Second slide, the runoff trench system. Here's the slope from the livestock pens. Trenches A, B, and C feed the basin. Designed per code as an open-air manure runoff collection system. Slide 3, the warning signs. Here are the signs posted by the Agricultural Waste Division. Violations for ignoring these include personal liability, HOA liability, and fines exceeding $2,000 per occurrence. Slide 4, the crowd at nature night. Kids, dogs, coolers, tents. Here's what happened after Karen covered those signs with picnic blankets. Gasps, murmurs, a cough from the back. Slide 5, the pond bubbling. This is methane release caused by anaerobic decomposition. The gas contains hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, and bioaerosols. This was taken 20 minutes before your movie night. Slide 6, the child vomiting. And this is your reminder that your negligence wasn't just annoying. It was dangerous. Silence. You could hear someone swallow. Karen stepped forward. "Okay, that's dramatic. But boundaries around that pond haven't been clearly marked for years. There's always been community use near the edge." "Wrong," I said. "I've got 12 years of tax rolls, trail camera footage, and weather-sealed signage posted every season. You tore down 3 signs and lied in flyers. That's not confusion. That's fraud. I didn't. You hosted an event after the county health inspector posted a Class C waste hazard warning. Then the room parted, like a tide, because walking in through the side door was the inspector himself. Clipboard in one hand, a sealed envelope in the other. He didn't need a mic. My name is Scott Eldridge. I work for County Health and Agricultural Waste Oversight. We issued a hazard classification on that pond last Thursday. It is not recreational. It is not public. It is designated a livestock runoff collection zone, and anyone found using or promoting it for public activity is in violation of both health and trespass laws. He walked forward, handed the envelope to the HOA vice president. Here's a full report, including samples, timestamps, and submitted complaints. And yes, Karen McAdams is listed by name. You could feel the shift, a long, slow pivot of every head in the room turning to face Karen. She tried to rally. I never intended. Did you read the reports? I thought. Did you ignore 3 written complaints? They weren't formal. Did you tell people the pond was safe for kids? She looked around for help. None came. One board member stood up. Another followed. Then the vice president, gray-haired and usually half asleep, cleared his throat. Effective immediately, I motioned to remove Karen McAdams from her position as HOA president. A hand raised. Another. Then another. Then everyone. No debate. Just hands and silence. Karen stood alone. The vice president nodded. Motion passed. He turned to me. Sir, we formally apologize for the misuse of your property. The board will issue a letter to all residents confirming the restricted status of the pond and the enforcement of all posted signs. He paused. Would you like to say anything else? I looked around. At the people. At the tired faces. At the ones who had doubted, mocked, shrugged me off. Then I smiled. Nope. I think the pond said enough. Karen walked out alone. No clipboard. No sunglasses. No exit speech. Just the sound of her shoes squeaking across laminate tile and the low drone of 60 quiet neighbors watching her legacy crumble. Outside, I sat on the bench by the flagpole. The air was still. The moon was bright. And for once, the only thing that stank was memory. The fence went up 3 days after the meeting. Not tall, not dramatic, just enough to draw a line in the dirt and remind anyone with bad instincts and a good flyer printer that this was not public space. I even made the sign myself. Burned the letters with a branding iron, just for flair. Manure pond, not a park. Private agricultural runoff site. Violators will be physically gagged again. I figured humor would land better than more warning tape. And it did. People laughed. Then they backed off. Which was the point. The HOA, now under new leadership and a much quieter board, did their part. They held a vote, passed a bylaw, then posted it to the official community website, right above Karen's old Nature Night page. It reads, effective immediately, all HOA-sponsored events must include legal verification of land use, property lines, and environmental classification status before public promotion. It might be the most beautiful sentence ever written in suburban English. Karen sold the house, listed it quietly under a different agent. No open house, no goodbye wave. The moving truck came early one morning. By noon, she was gone. Someone said she moved to Florida. Someone else said she joined another HOA. I wish that HOA good luck and thicker noses. The community, to their credit, adjusted quickly. Now when someone walks near the fence line, they stop. They squint. They point. Then they ask, is this yours? Where does the property line fall? Mind if I walk the edge? The same people who once camped beside methane gas with marshmallows in hand now treat the dirt with reverence. It's hilarious. And honestly, a little satisfying. The best twist? The pond is useful now. Really useful. A local 4-H chapter reached out. Apparently word got around about the HOA poop pond debacle, and they saw opportunity. Now, once a month, kids in boots and ponytails come by for outdoor learning. They tour the pasture, see how trench runoff works, learn how waste management helps protect water sources and maintain healthy livestock. One kid raised his hand and asked if this was the pond where the HOA lady fainted. Another drew a cartoon of a tent flying into the sky labeled Karen's Retreat. I laminated it, framed it in the barn. Funny thing is, people started telling the story like folklore. You know that place near the tree line? Yeah, that's where the HOA learned the hard way. What happened? Let's just say they went nose first into karma. The ranch got a nickname. People call it the Line Ranch now. Some say it's because of the fence. Some say it's because of the line that got crossed and the line that got redrawn. Either way, the point stuck. I still sit by the pond sometimes. Even now, after everything. When the sun hits the surface just right, it almost looks beautiful. Still smells like bulls sometimes, but also like peace. Because now the boundaries are clear, and the respect earned. Not because I raised my voice, but because I waited long enough for the wind to do the talking. They thought my pond was peaceful. Still water and sunshine. A hidden gem tucked at the edge of the neighborhood, just waiting to be claimed, and branded with an HOA flyer. But they didn't ask what it was for. Didn't ask who owned it. Didn't ask why no one else ever camped there, or why the grass around it wasn't mowed, or why the wind changed the way it did in the evenings. They just saw space, and assumed it was theirs. So they pitched tents, strung up lanterns, launched canoes, toasted marshmallows over the open breath of decomposing livestock waste, and called it community. But not everything pretty is safe, and not everything unclaimed is yours to take. Because when you cross a line that's been there longer than your street address, the land remembers. It doesn't yell. It doesn't warn twice. It just shifts under the heat behind the reeds beneath the waterline and reminds you why boundaries exist in the first place. Not to divide people, but to protect them. Sometimes, the land doesn't need lawyers or fences to speak. Sometimes, it just needs a warm day and one good gust of wind.